All right, let's get right into it. There's this huge, deeply human question science has been chipping away at for decades. What really makes us who we are and who we love?
You've probably heard this a million times, right? Nature or nurture? For so long, that simple question was the entire debate. But, as scientists started to really dig in, they realized, wow, the real story is so much more complex and honestly way more fascinating than just a simple either-or.
So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to play detective. We're going to follow the clues that science has uncovered, piece by piece, and build a case to understand what we know about the biology behind it all. Okay, so our first clue takes us back to 1991, and it all starts with a discovery, a really small one, deep inside the human brain, but it was absolutely massive in its impact. It totally changed the conversation.
So you have this neuroscientist, Simon LeVay, and he's thinking, could there be something physical, something you can actually point to that's linked to sexual orientation? He decided to look at the hypothalamus. You can think of it as the brain's little command center for hormones and sex drive. So what he did was he compared the brains of gay men and straight men who had passed away.
And this is super cool. This is a diagram from his actual paper from 1991. He was zeroing in on these 4 super tiny clusters of brain cells. They've got a long name, but everyone just calls them INH for short. His whole plan was just to measure the size of each of these 4 clusters.
And what he found was, well, it was pretty striking. In one of those clusters, the third one known as INH3, it was more than twice as large in the heterosexual men compared to the homosexual men. And get this, the INH3 in the homosexual men was basically the same size as what you'd typically find in women. Boom, there it was, our first major clue, a physical, structural difference in the brain correlated with sexual orientation.
But hold on. Any good detective knows you can't just jump to conclusions with the first clue. LeVay himself was really clear about this. This is a correlation, not causation. It doesn't prove one thing causes the other. Plus, there was a huge catch. Most of the gay men in his study had died from AIDS, and it was possible the disease itself could have altered their brain structure. So, a groundbreaking clue? Absolutely. But the case was definitely not closed.
All right, on to clue number 2. For this one, we have to go way back. I mean, way back, before we're even born, into the incredibly influential environment of the womb.
Now, this is going to sound a little weird, but one of the cleverest ways scientists look for clues about what happened in the womb is by looking at our fingers. Seriously, the ratio in length between your index finger and your ring finger is a subtle marker for the level of hormones like testosterone that you were exposed to before you were born. A huge recent review of many studies confirmed a pattern. On average, gay men tend to have a ratio more typical for women, suggesting less exposure to those prenatal hormones, while lesbians often have a more male typical ratio, suggesting more exposure.
And the womb gives us another really fascinating piece of evidence. This one tries to explain something scientists have observed for a long time, called the fraternal birth order effect. It's a pretty consistent finding. Men with more older brothers are statistically more likely to be gay. So why would that be? Well, the leading explanation for this is something called the maternal immune hypothesis.
Okay, so here's the basic idea. With each son a mother carries, her immune system can build up a stronger and stronger response to male-specific proteins. So in later pregnancies with another son, it's possible these maternal antibodies could cross the placenta and subtly influence the way the new baby's brain is developing.
This brings us to our third clue. And this one's a bit more complex, but it's so important because it helps crack a puzzle that had scientists scratching their heads for years. So here's the mystery. On one hand, you have twin studies, and they clearly show that sexual orientation is significantly heritable. Identical twins are more likely to share the same sexual orientation than non-identical twins. But, on the other hand, scientists have run massive genetic studies, and they have never found a single gay gene. So, what gives? How can something be heritable if there's no specific gene for it?
Well, the answer seems to lie in a mind-blowing concept called epigenetics. I love this analogy. If your DNA is the book of life, epigenetics are like the sticky notes and highlights that tell your body which sentences to read and which ones to ignore. These little chemical tags, or epimarks, don't change the DNA itself, but they switch genes on or off. And here's the kicker. Sometimes those instructions can get passed down from parent to child.
So in 2012, a group of researchers proposed this groundbreaking theory. They argued that during development, sex-specific epimarks are created to, for example, protect a female fetus from being masculinized by testosterone. Now, usually, these marks are totally wiped clean before being passed to the next generation. But what if they weren't? What if they sometimes escaped that erasure process and got passed on?
And this diagram really helps visualize how that could work. A mother's feminizing epimarks, which were crucial for her development, might get passed on to her son, or a father's masculinizing epimarks could get passed to his daughter. This suddenly gives us a potential explanation for how sexual orientation could be passed down without there being a specific gay gene to find.
So let's step back and look at our detective board. We've examined clues from the brain, from the womb, and from these incredible genetic switches. So after all that, what has our investigation actually revealed?
We have 3 really compelling lines of evidence. We have physical differences in brain structure, we have powerful influences from the prenatal environment, and we have this amazing mechanism of epigenetic switches. And this is where it all starts to connect. I mean, maybe those switches are the very thing that directs the brain differences we see, or maybe they're what makes the body more or less sensitive to hormones in the womb in the first place.
The key takeaway here really is that there is no single cause. The old nature versus nurture debate was just far too simple. Instead, the evidence points to this beautiful, complex mosaic of interacting biological factors that start shaping who we are long before we're even born.
And this whole scientific detective story leaves us with a final, really powerful thought. The science isn't just explaining a trait. It kind of reveals a deeper truth about humanity itself. If our own biology is a complex mosaic built from countless diverse influences, then maybe it shows us that variation isn't the exception to the rule. Maybe variation is the rule.